part of the Press Play Podcast Network.
Hello, you're listening to Books with Brookes, the monthly book club podcast that's part of the Press Play Podcast Network. I'm coming to you at the very, very tail end of July 2022 so that we can talk about our book for this month, which was called 28 Summers by Elin Hilderbrand. And I am thrilled that my sweet, sweet friend Beth is here to discuss it with me. Hi, Beth.
Hi, Brooks.
How are you?
I'm pretty good, Brooks.
Pretty good. I'll take
P
it.
good.
Nowadays, P good is just about as good as you can get, I think.
Yeah.
Before we get into talking about this summer beach read by Elin Hilderbrand, I want to take a quick second to announce our August 2022 book will be Exhalation by Ted Chiang. And this is a short story compilation. I think we've only done one other short story book. Wait, is that right?
Yes. Yeah.
David Sedaris, right? For Christmas.
Yes, which was an interesting one.
It was really surprising, all of our reactions to that beloved book. Yes. Okay. So this will be our second short story journey. And I'm really excited because I've read another book by him called Stories of Your Life and Others. And the title story in it is called Stories of Your Life. And it is actually the short story that the movie Arrival was based on, which I loved.
Such a good movie, Brooks.
It's an amazing blow your mind movie. And so Ted Chiang writes all these like little short stories that will all of them blow your mind and make you like totally shift your perspective about one thing or another. He's an insane short story writer. He's actually never written a novel, which is fascinating. And he writes in a genre that is apparently called speculative fiction. Not a term I was familiar with before, but it is apparently like speculative fiction is settings other than the real world. They often involve like supernatural, futuristic, or imagined elements. So we came onto this book because some members of book club had expressed wanting to read sci-fi. And so I think they're kind of sci-fi. They're a little, some of them are sort of dystopian. You get a lot of different things. Although I will say the only disclaimer I'm going to make, aside from this book being about short stories, which is not what we usually read, it's that when I read Stories of Your Life and Others, I seriously like daily think about like 3 of the stories. And then at least 2 of them I absolutely could barely get through. So
okay.
They're sort of all over the place. We'll see if we have that same experience with Exhalation. I don't know. But I did find the stories to either like heavy resonate with me and like wormhole into my brain, or I like absolutely hated them and didn't see the point and like could barely finish. So we'll see.
Awesome. I'm so excited. I love sci-fi.
I'm excited. Yay. Okay, good. Yeah. And I betcha, I mean, I'm no oracle, but I bet after Arrival that some more of these short stories are going to get turned into movies. And if they're not, someone isn't already doing that, I will do it.
Okay, let's do it with our billions of dollars we have.
Let's use all of our billions of dollars. Yes. So Exhalation by Ted Chiang, and that's spelled Chiang. Look it up, get a copy, read along with us, and we'll be back next month to talk about it. And so for today, we're going to talk about a way different book than the one we were just describing.
No sci-fi.
28 Summers by Elin Hilderbrand. And I feel like I put, I don't think I wrote it down, but Elin Hilderbrand, Elin, is like the queen of the beach read. She writes like 2 books a year or something. They like all are set on Nantucket. I don't think they all are, but a lot of them are. Where she lives, which is this little island off the coast of New York that I know nothing about, but I'm now fascinated by. And she's like the queen of the beach read. And we wanted a beach read. You know, it's summer. We're all going to the pool, whatever. Try not to use our brains as much, I suppose, in the heat. Beth, tell us what this book is about.
Oh, man. Okay. Well, this book is about Mallory Blessing, who is a woman who lives in New York and in her, I believe, early 20s. And she lives with her best friend Leland, and basically a crazy thing happens where her kind of estranged aunt dies and leaves her house and $100,000.
If only that would happen to all of us. Like,
Right?
I feel like this is such a common story, and I've never heard of this happening in real life. Like, come on, estranged aunties.
I think I might have a friend who like inherited a house. I gotta look into
Wow.
that. Anyways, so the house is on Nantucket. It's kind of like a cottage situation, but Mallory Blessing grew up going there and like loves it. And her aunt felt like, Nantucket is a really special place. It's only like right for certain people, and that she always thought Mallory was right for the house. So basically, Mallory's like, see ya, New York. Like her friend Leland kind of sucks, and nothing's really happening for her there. And she's like, I'm moving to Nantucket. I'm gonna
Listen,
start like, yeah,
who would make a different decision than that is a question that I have. I felt like the book treated it like, whoa, she's doing this crazy thing. And I was like, if you asked me a house, of course I would move into it immediately,
yeah,
especially if it was beachfront.
exactly. No, it was a good move on Mallory's part.
Yeah.
So basically, there are a lot of characters in this book, and all of them, like relate to Mallory in some way. But long story short, her brother Cooper is getting married, and he wants to have his bachelor party on the house in the house in Nantucket. And basically, he brings his friend Jake from college, and Mallory and Jake have sort of chatted on the phone in the past when Mallory would like call to try and get Cooper on the phone because this was before cell phones. Um, and Mallory already always kind of thought he was cute or sounded cool or whatever. And they basically just hit it off. Cooper's fiance is super jealous, and she's like, you can't actually stay there for the whole weekend. So he leaves, and Mallory is like, basically has the weekend to fall in love with Jake McLeod.
Jake McLeod.
What a
That's right. What a
name.
name. What a name.
So, basically the book goes in a million different directions from here, but the central line, being in the name 28 Summers, is that Jake and Mallory decide that they're going to repeat this special weekend every single year. That Jake is somehow going to get out to Nantucket, and they're going to spend a romantic weekend together over Labor Day every year. And they
No
vow to
matter
do
what.
this no matter what.
Mm-hmm.
And so basically, we kind of go along the journey of like their entire lives, which I have realized, Brooks, I love a generational book, like a
Mm-hmm.
long timeline book. I really liked
Yes.
Greenwood, which was kind of like
Yeah.
that. I just like love.
Similar.
I mean, I love it. So
That's
there's
great.
just a lot that happens from there, but
There's a
for a
lot.
real long time, Jake gets out there every summer
That's
for a
right. He
steamy
does.
reprise.
Despite his marriage and his children and his career and his friendships and literally everything else. Yeah, that's right. And
Exactly.
the only thing I'll add, what a great description, Beth. You really set the scene for us.
Ugh.
The only thing I'll add to that is that the plot of this book is based exactly on the plot of a movie called Same Time Next Summer, I believe. Yeah, so it's called Same Time Next Year.
Yeah,
It's a movie
yeah.
from 1978
Mhm.
that had a bunch of nominations, yada yada. So I feel like in order to cover for the fact that this is a completely recycled plot, our main characters actually watch that movie every year, and it is the inspiration for their relationship. So it's sort of life imitating art or art
Yeah.
imitating art. I don't know.
It's same movie, same weekend, same summer, same
Yeah,
year.
they like do all the same activities, very nostalgic. Exactly. Cool. Um, Beth, have you ever read Ellen Hilderbrand before?
I have not, and I gotta say, I would read more.
Yeah. Oh, me too. I was like, I kept, and this is stupid. Listen, none of us should do this. I'm berating my own self here. Like, I felt a little bit embarrassed that I liked this book. I was like, oh my God, how am I going to tell my followers I loved this book? And it's like, no, Brooks, you know what? You like what you like. Okay. And there's nothing wrong with that. And there's no morality connected to it. It's totally fine.
I totally agree.
Yeah. It was great. I mean, she is as famous as she is. She has so many books as she has. She got this great formula. She's got this great, she writes amazing characters. Yeah, it's so sad. This book was extremely satisfying
Mhm.
in so many ways, including what you said about like the passing of time. I totally agree. It's like really satisfying to read a book where you watch someone age like that.
Mhm.
I love it. I love it as well. Okay. Which is all to say, that was my soapbox. Listen, we can like a bunch of different kinds of books. Just because I like this book doesn't make me a dumb idiot. Doesn't mean I won't ever like literary fiction again. Okay, Brooks, get out of your head. That was a lecture to myself.
Me leaving my food that I wanted to eat in the microwave for 8 hours does make me a dumb idiot, but that's okay.
For 8 hours?
I'm kidding.
Did you still eat it when you found it in there? I would have. I would have been like,
No.
oh, well, I'll just eat it now.
Gotta go
I guess
vomit.
it depends on how much meat or dairy was in there. I
Yeah.
don't eat meat, so I'd probably be fine. That's so funny. Okay. So neither of us have really read Ellen Hilderbrand. We have one member of book club. Shout out to Catherine. Big Ellen
Shout out,
Hilderbrand fan.
Catherine.
She was really supportive of us picking this book. I appreciate that so much. She had some really great perspectives. Like, they're fun. These books are really, I'm sure I was drawn in immediately. I mean, you're just
Yeah.
immediately in. And
Yeah.
the pacing, which I don't think the pacing was perfect. We talked about that at book club, but like the way that the years pass and the way that the material is presented really keeps things moving.
Yes. This is a page turner.
Yes. Even though I would argue like actually not really a lot happens, at least not between our main characters, because they're not
No.
together for 90%
Right.
of the book. But because it's told over these years, it moves and you're just constantly like, can't wait to hear what's gonna happen next. And that's a
Yeah.
mark of a good story, you know?
Exactly.
So, although I am thrilled to say that when we had book club this week, 5 of us liked it. So there were way more I liked the book than there were I didn't like the books. That, of course, also made me feel better.
Yeah.
Yeah, Beth, what are some major themes of this book?
Oh my gosh. Well, we already said time.
Yeah,
Um,
the passage of
I
time.
think I I think we talked a lot about this at book club, but like integrity, I think like trust.
Integrity, yeah.
Um, I would say uh, like a theme would be like maybe chosen family. Um, honestly, the biggest one I think is trust in this book and sort of
Yeah.
the idea of like what it means to be faithful to friends or a relationship or to yourself. I don't know. We had a great
Yeah.
conversation on integrity, I thought.
Yeah. We did. And I think that's like one of the biggest themes in this book. And maybe just honestly, like subjective integrity, which I feel like it isn't a thing you think about
Mm,
being subjective, but it totally is. Like we all have our own,
yes.
moral compass. They may be similar to other people's, but I think all of us have lines in different places. And the way that we define good or bad or right or wrong, like there's still a lot of gray area in there when you get
Yeah.
down to it. So
Yeah.
it was interesting. Yeah, this was a fun book to talk about at book club because I think it does introduce a lot of like moral ambiguity, and that's always really fun to talk about.
Yeah.
Another one someone said was friendship, deception, authenticity. Yeah, all of
Mhm.
those, I think, definitely. Beth, if you have I don't have my copy in front of me because I lent it to a friend. But Beth, do you want to read our first sentence?
I would love to. And just for the viewers, I would like you all to know that somehow I skipped the first chapter. Uh,
Do you really think
I
you did?
100% did. I
Oh
skipped
my
the
God.
prologue. I'm realizing now I started at part 1 because I think I just opened it and
Oh.
assumed that was correct.
Oh my
So
gosh. Okay, that opens like a bunch of doors that we should talk about actually, because I feel like you probably had a very different experience with this book, skipping the
100% I had
prologue.
no idea how it was going to end. And
Oh
so
my God.
when you said like some people in our book club hadn't finished the book and Brooks said, oh, well, that's okay. It begins with the end. In my head, I was like, what?
Oh,
I know.
okay. But so now that you know, do you think it's better without the prologue?
Oh, 100%.
Yeah.
100%
Oh
better.
my God.
Yes.
I can't believe we didn't really talk about this at book club, but like, why is there that prologue?
I honestly don't know. I mean, it is like a movie magic kind of thing, but to me, it just is unnecessary.
Yeah. I am now thinking also it's very unnecessary. That is crazy.
Hey everyone, this is Mike Voorhees.
And I'm Brian Shaw. No, not the pitcher. We're the Guardians of the Land MLB podcast, formerly a Swinging a Tribe.
Don't have time to watch 162 games of baseball? We do. We have you covered with recaps of the games, stats, and analysis throughout the MLB season.
Subscribe now to Guardians of the Land and Press Play Pods for all your Cleveland sports analysis.
Okay. Let's talk about this more, but read us the first sentence, would you?
Okay, sure. Would you like me to read what are we talking about in 2020? Because that's pretty long, or should I just read the actual first sentence?
Okay, well, let's clarify. We do kind of have two first sentences. So every chapter, which every chapter equates to a year, begins with basically a list of things that have, like current events, pop culture from that year. So it's like, what are we talking about in 2020? And so really that's our first line. And then it's a list of things that were popular in 2020. Right. So every chapter starts with that. So that's, I guess, technically our first sentence, but let's read below that our first like actual narrative copy.
Sure. Mallory Blessing tells her son Link, there's an envelope in the third drawer of the desk.
Ooh, that was beautiful, Beth. Great job.
Oh, thanks. I didn't know if I should say envelope. I said envelope.
Envelope is how I say it, but
okay, good. Okay.
We're from the Midwest. I don't know what's right.
Envelope.
The envelope. Okay, Mallory Blessing asked her son Link to find the envelope in the top drawer on the left or whatever. Okay, great. I loved this first sentence, although I was confused by the name Link for some reason. That kept throwing me off.
It just makes me think of Hairspray, Link Larkin.
Yeah. It just makes me think of Zelda.
Oh,
but that's a good reference as well. Yeah, the Link word did kind of throw me off, but the rest of it, great. And then we jump right into, so basically the prologue explains that Mallory Blessing is dying. Link is her son, and she has some sort of connection to Jake McCloud, although we don't really know because isn't clarified in this, although I think from context clues, we can probably figure it out. Mm-hmm. But so basically Link, because his mom is dying, has to call this phone number and he doesn't know who he's calling, and who answers is someone famous named Jake McCloud, who says, I'll be right there. Tell her to wait for me. And that's our prologue. So basically, it gives you all the, when a friend was like, oh, I didn't finish the book. I'm like, it doesn't matter. We know how it ends. Like nothing's going to be spoiled for you. But now I'm wondering, like, what was it even written that way?
I honestly don't know. Like, I hate the idea. I loved that I mistakenly did.
Were you absolutely pissed that Mallory died in the end? Not knowing that was going to happen?
I mean, not pissed. I mean, people die. I think like, she was young. I mean, like I sort of thought it was sort of jarring, but more so than that, at the end of the book, I was just kind of confused at the phone call and stuff because I didn't really understand where this number had come from. And in my reader brain, I was like, man, I must have blacked out during a chapter.
Right.
Or something.
I forgot a bunch. Yeah, I always do that. That's a really, I wonder, I almost think, and I feel like I can't remember what book I had this theory about. There's been others. So I have this theory that like, if the death of the character will be too devastating, either emotionally or like to the story, it's introduced right up front so that you don't go through the grief of losing the character.
Oh, interesting. I've never heard that.
I have never really heard that either, but that's my theory. And I can't remember, there was another book where I felt really strongly about this. It was like, the reason we were told right up front is because it would have been too devastating to be told at the end. I don't know. I mean, obviously there are plenty of stories where like characters die and it's tragic and emotional, but I don't know, with some genres, I think they try to avoid that. This might be one of them.
I'm not sure. Maybe it was the beach readiness of
Yeah.
this. I really enjoyed it, but I'm not sure that I was invested to the point that I was like
Oh my God,
tearing
no,
up,
I would have been, I used the correct word, pissed. If I had read this entire book about their love story, just to have her die abruptly at the end, I would have been furious. So I don't know. That's really interesting.
Well, we only have our experiences, so I'll never know what it's like to have read
You'll
the
never
prologue.
know. Okay, what did you think of that device of like opening the chapters with a list of what was popular that year? Did you like that?
Yeah, I mean, so we kind of mentioned this in book club, but I think for me it was actually really fun and really really helpful because I think that the passage of time in a narrative is hard for an author unless they really like intricately sew in like references to things that are dated.
Mhm.
And I felt like she kind of avoided having to do
Yeah.
that by setting the scene for the reader, being like, this is the year, this is what's going on. So
Yeah.
you aren't like being like, oh man, can you fax me that?
Yeah.
Like it
And Britney Spears was playing on the radio. Yeah.
right. We know the year, like it's okay. And then I also enjoy it sort of looking through the list and being like, which references did I know and which did I not? Because we realized that a lot of us did not know a lot of these things, which was sort of
Yeah,
funny.
it was funny. Because you think like, I mean, you always think you're going to remember everything and then you don't, or maybe that's just me. I always think that. I'm like, oh, I'll remember. And then
Yeah.
literally the next day, I'm like, I don't even remember what I was supposed to be remembering. But I remember trying to remember it or saying that I'm going to remember it. Anyways, I always
Exactly.
think like the biggest things in a year, I don't remember them, but like, well, that's not true at all. It's not true at all.
Like my food in the microwave.
Especially, I feel like how, I mean, you know, with like social media and cable news and stuff, like how much information we receive in a daily basis, multiplied over a
Yes.
year lately, and just like how many stupid world events there have been. Like, stop it. I cannot remember all of them. There is no way.
Right. Exactly.
And maybe it's always been like that, but it feels especially bad these days.
I mean, it was a good reminder though, like looking through all of the really tragic things that like everyone was talking about in whatever year they were in, because like it's sometimes easy to think that like things are really bad now and they've never been as bad. But like they did reference like the section about 9/11, and it was sort of jarring for me. It was sort of intense, like kind of threw me back to that time. And there's been a lot of years in history that have had really catastrophic things happen, and so we sort of persist on and we survive.
Yeah, well, and it is like, and I'm just thinking about this now, but like it was a cool dichotomy of like, yeah, reading about these catastrophic world events or like popular pop culture moments and famous people and celebrities, and then immediately we're just back into Mallory's life. Like, and that's how all of our existences are basically. Like, it's like this thing happens and this thing happens, but like I still got to eat dinner and wash my shoes. I guess I wash my shoes. I don't know why I said that. Wash my shoes.
I gotta wash my shoes every
my
day.
shoes are so dirty. I gotta wash them every day. Oh my God, that's so funny. What was I even trying to say? Wash my face, maybe? I think I was trying to say wash my face, and then I said shoes. Anyways, like these huge moments get overshadowed by just the mundanity of our own lives. And I kind of love that.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
There were some moments in the book, and I asked Catherine, like, does she do this in all of her books? Because I thought maybe this is just like a Elin Hilderbrand like narrator like voice. But there were several moments where like it would suddenly be like our girl Mallory or like our pal Jake, and like it threw me a little bit. I wasn't sure why those were in there, and I didn't like them.
So I didn't love it either, but I did sort of appreciate it retrospectively, because I think that there was something reassuring. Okay, so hear me out. So you start to realize towards maybe the first quarter of the book that like what they're doing is kind of wrong, like, and it's sort of immoral and
dirty and sketchy,
upsetting. And I sort of appreciate that, like, as an author, she said, look, like, we're behind these two people, like the faults are not, like, we've got them through and through, like, and that sort of like I think it took the onus off of me to have to feel like morally like better than them or something. Like, I was like, nope, we're taking this story for what it is. And I can separate myself from my own like judgment.
Yeah, I guess. Totally. All right. I accept. I think that's probably a really good point, and I hadn't thought of it that way. And I definitely didn't. Yeah, like, and again, this is part of why this book is fun to discuss. Is like, were you rooting for the main characters? Like, were they good people? Like, despite this one thing that they were doing that was arguably bad.
I mean, that's a great question, because like I don't actually think that I was ever rooting for them.
You weren't?
But I enjoyed the book. No, I don't think that I was like, I hope they get together. I sort of was just enjoying like.
You didn't hope they got together?
No, because I thought it was like, and this is something we talked about in the book club, like I thought it was pretty icky. Like I didn't like the behavior. I thought it was like, just like not right, especially when the book does decide to like go into the other people's stories, like Ursula, his wife.
Yeah, once you start
like
hearing
that
from Ursula, definitely.
It's hard. And I think like I really enjoyed the book very much, but I wasn't like, it wasn't a romance to me in the way that I was like, oh, if only they would just like both read each other's letter at the same time and see that they actually are in love. Like, I think that they knew they were in love and they knew what they were doing. And I don't know, I just sort of was in it for more of the narrative, like elsewhere.
Interesting. And that's funny to me too, because you didn't know how it was going to end. Like, I knew how it was going to end, and I still was like, oh, they should get together. Well, maybe they will next year.
Oh, funny. Yeah, I had no idea she was going to die.
No idea. Let's talk about, I do think in this book, all of the characters suck. Like, they're all terrible friends and family members and community members and lovers. And like Cooper's the worst person I've ever heard of. He's been married by the end of the book 5 times, and all of them were crazy or like had some sort of drug addiction. I'm using a lot of air quotes here because I just feel like it's real annoying way to describe like exes. And he's like he goes on trips and then ignores the people he's with in favor, like those shit friend moves. Like, don't do that to your friends. Ugh, he bothered me so much. Then he like never came and visited his kid, and like he sucked. Cooper I did not like, which is funny because they have there's a sequel to this out.
Oh yeah.
Although Catherine said it's really short, like more like a novella, but it's like about the kids, I think, and it's called The 6th Wedding. So it's obviously a Cooper's 6th wedding, which makes me just not even want to read it because I'm so mad at Cooper. That guy sucks so bad, and he like all of this is his fault. All of it.
Yeah, I loved hearing you rant about this at book club because I didn't really think about Cooper that much, and it is totally true. Everything
I think
you
maybe
said.
I'm revealing probably some of my own familial issues.
Sure.
Lately, probably I'm really, I think, projecting, but yeah, Cooper is the worst. So yeah, let's talk about the morality of this, Beth. Having a same time next year. So it's a person who you never speak to, you never text them, you don't see them any other times, you don't give any more of your time and attention to them except for 3 nights a year. What's the deal with that?
Do you think people actually do this?
No, certainly not. I don't think something like this is possible.
I don't either, especially nowadays. Like, I do think like the movie and the book are like totally contingent on the fact that like this starts before like
Yes.
technology is like really
Yes.
accessible.
He would
Um,
literally send her a postcard. Yeah.
I mean, like that's nuts. Like it, it's just insane. I mean, the whole thing is just nuts. I think I I can't imagine that. Like, think about how much you change in a year. Like, I just can't imagine keeping a flame that is so intense, like, and having it relit like after 360 what 2 days of not seeing them.
Yeah.
Like, I just don't. It just doesn't make a lot of like logical sense. But at the same time, like and to be honest, the only thing that does maybe make sense to me about it is more from like Jake's perspective than Mallory's, because Mallory is single, available, like she has her whole life like ahead of her. And Jake is kind of caught in this somewhat loveless marriage. And so for him, I can kind of see it being a thing where he sort of fantasizes about this other life, and that kind of keeps him going for the year. But for
Mhm.
Mallory, it just doesn't make a lot of sense to me.
Yeah. I kind of agree. Well, and it's
It's sort
also
of
like
depressing.
it's very depressing. And it's also like it's so like it's a story you would tell about teenagers, right? Like, and we
Mm.
met at summer camp every year and we would kiss under the maple tree, and it's like, but we're
Yeah.
reading about characters who are having their own children and who are getting married and who like are turning 40 and 50. Like, I just don't think we're like, it's not the same. Our emotions aren't the same. Like our yeah, I don't think it's possible. I don't think it's possible.
Yeah.
I think wouldn't work.
I mean, I think in general, like we were talking about this too. Like I think that affairs are indicators of like some level of immaturity. Like it's people who think that there's something better, but they're not willing to commit to it. I mean, it's like really kind of, I don't know, it's like you're living in that camp land. You're living in, I'm
Yeah.
18 and I just met this person under the dock, and
Under the
like
dog. Yeah.
and I touched her boob, and it's like it's like, okay, like that's not real life.
Yeah. Yeah. So it was yeah. I feel like you couldn't go out and just live your life and then show back up and like have everything be normal. Like
No, and like
that's not
part
how
of me was
anything
thinking
works.
like, okay, what about like you get sick or he breaks his arm or like, I mean, there's just, I don't know, like I feel like, I guess the romantic part of it is that like you don't get to know someone well enough to like know their icky sides.
Right.
So,
Hmm.
but but to me, it's like totally unrealistic that you would go 28 summers like seeing someone 3 days, the same 3 days every year, and like I don't know, just still maintain that level of like passion.
Yeah. Totally. Yeah. Well, and like again, we started talking with about integrity at the beginning of this, but like our girl Mallory, as Ellen Hilderbrand would say, our girl Mallory thinks she has a lot of integrity, and she says at different times, like, "Well, I have a lot of integrity," or like, I'm a very moral person," and she believes that what she's doing is totally fine because they stay within these guardrails and they never break the rules.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
she seems to justify those 3 days by saying, like, "I don't take any of the other days, ever, for any reason."
Right.
And so for her, and I guess for Jake too, although we don't get in his head as much, um, that makes her a person of integrity, which I think is delusional.
Yeah, I completely agree. It is delusional.
But, when you're in her head about it, you're like, "Okay, I kinda get what you're saying. I don't think you're right."
Right, exactly.
Um Yeah, and especially like once it got to the later years and they couldn't leave the house without him being recognized, and it had to become so secretive that it's like, okay, everyone knows if you've got to sneak around like that when you're doing something you shouldn't be doing. But
Right.
there's a reason you're having to keep it a secret. And like that should be a big red flag, y'all, to everyone.
The reddest.
So, like, either, yeah, it means you're lying to a lot of people that you love, probably.
Right.
Regardless of the reason, that's the action that you're taking, and that action in itself is harmful to those that you love. So, anyways, the cheating stuff was not great. It was a really interesting love story. I mean, I kind of felt this way actually about We Are the Brennans, because we had that whole, there was a love triangle in that book, and we had we all kind of disagreed on like who we were rooting for. Like, did you want the main character to leave his wife to be with his first love, or had he sort of made his bed and like needed to lie in it? And I kind of feel like it was a little similar here.
Yeah. I think Elin Hilderbrand made Ursula a really multi-dimensional, interesting character, and that kind of, because at first you're like, she sucks, like she's awful.
Yeah,
like,
Ursula, Jake's husband. Yeah, well, and that's why I think we got into her head for that chapter, where we really did get to hear from Ursula. And so it wasn't just like, oh, she's crazy, she's mean, his marriage is loveless, like he's not at fault. Like, no, he was just as at fault for the shittiness of their marriage. Like, he had also given up and decided like, this is as good as it's gonna get. Let me ride it out. Like, I think he was emotionally checked out before he even met Mallory. So
yeah, he was like a little traumatized and like numb.
Yeah,
I think.
Yeah, I think that's true. Well, we're running out of time, as always. I could talk about this book all day, and all books all day. But I hope everyone enjoyed the conversation and have your own really strong feelings about Jake and Mallory and Beth. I love you so much. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast.
Oh, this is just the ultimate pleasure for me.
Thrilling to have you.
You want to do like same time next month?
Same time next month. I'll see you back here. We'll talk about exhalation. Well, actually, what we might do for that one, well, I won't spoil it, but we have a creative idea. Yes. All right, everyone, please have a great summer and happy reading. Books with Brookes is produced by Mo Barrow with theme music by Jonathan Allen. Books with Brookes is part of the Press Play Podcast Network, which empowers hosts to create high-quality professional shows that inspire and entertain. If you've been dreaming of hosting your own podcast, we can help. Please email content@pressplaypodcast.com to get started today. Please be sure to subscribe to get the latest episodes wherever you listen to podcasts.